It was a quiet night on Earth. The sky was clear, the stars were shining, and most people were sleeping. Nothing seemed strange or dangerous. But then, something huge appeared in the sky. Over every major city, New York, London, Tokyo, Delhi, giant black ships came down from the clouds. They didn't make a sound. They just floated above the ground, blocking the moonlight. People looked up and froze. These were not human ships. They were alien, tall, sharp, and made of some dark metal that shimmered like water. Within minutes, the whole world was watching. News channels showed the same thing. Massive alien ships everywhere. They were not moving. They were just waiting. Then came the message. A voice spoke in every language, in every home, from every screen. The voice was cold, robotic, and full of power. We are the Zirconians. Earth now belongs to us. Obey, and you may live. Resist, and you will suffer. Panic exploded. People ran, screamed, hid. Governments tried to contact the aliens, but got no reply. Military jets flew up to the ships, but none of them returned. Then the Zirconian ships started to drop strange machines into the cities. They floated low, scanning buildings, roads, even people. No one knew what they were doing. One machine flew near a young girl in Mexico City. It stopped, looked at her, then flew away. She wasn't hurt, but something had scanned her mind. In Washington, soldiers tried to shoot one of the machines. It exploded and wiped out 5 city blocks in seconds. No bullet, no fire, just light and silence. Earth had never seen anything like this. The Zirconians didn't attack fully. They didn't destroy the cities. They didn't kill everyone. Instead, they waited, as if they were searching or testing. Some people thought it was the end. Others thought it was the beginning of something worse. In a secret base under Colorado, a group of military leaders and scientists gathered. One of them, General Marcus Hale, looked at the satellite images. "These ships," he said, "they're not invading. Not yet. They're watching." Dr. Elena Ward, a scientist who studied space signals, looked pale. "They've been listening to us for years. Radio, internet, satellites. They knew everything before they arrived." General Hale asked, "Then why wait? Why not attack now?" Dr. Ward didn't answer, but her eyes showed fear. Meanwhile, in a small African village, an old man named Kofi sat by the fire. He listened to the news on a crackling radio. Then he looked up at the stars and whispered, "The sky gods have come. But they are not gods. They are afraid." Afraid. That word began to echo around the world. What were the Zirconians afraid of? Why did they come in silence, with no full attack? Why were they scanning people instead of destroying them? In a dark part of the main Zirconian ship, high above Earth, 2 alien commanders spoke. One said, "This planet must be controlled quickly. If we wait too long, they will discover it." The other replied, "They are primitive, but they have something dangerous. We must find it before they do." What were they looking for? What dangerous thing could humans possibly have? Back on Earth, people didn't know about the Zirconians' secret fear. But some could feel it. Something was wrong. Not just with the aliens, but with Earth itself. Captain Rayner, a retired soldier living in the mountains, turned off the news. He picked up his old weapon and stared at the sky. "They didn't come to fight," he said quietly. "They came to hide." The days after the ships arrived were filled with silence and confusion. People stayed inside their homes. Streets were empty. Schools were closed. The skies were no longer blue. The large ships still floated above, unmoving, like shadows over the earth. But something had changed. In some cities, people noticed strange lights coming from the alien machines. These lights scanned buildings, trees, and even animals. Sometimes, the machines followed people silently, as if they were studying them. It was not clear what they were searching for. In London, A young boy named Liam saw a machine stop in front of an old library. It hovered for a few minutes, flashing small blue lights, and then flew away. The library had been closed for years. What could be so important inside? Around the world, people started sharing these strange sightings. A farmer in Brazil saw one of the machines studying a field of sunflowers. A woman in Japan saw it near a cave. A man in Egypt saw it scanning ancient stones. The machines weren't just looking at cities. They were looking at everything. At a quiet base hidden in the hills of Australia, a group of people watched closely. They were not part of any government. They called themselves the Watchers. They didn't wear uniforms, and they didn't follow rules. But they cared about the planet and its people. Their leader, Captain Raynor, was older now, with gray in his beard and sharp eyes that had seen too much. He had once worked for the army, but left when he realized that sometimes fighting wasn't the only way to win. Raynor stood in front of a group of 12 people, all watching different screens. "They're not here just to take over," he said. "They're looking for something, and whatever it is, they don't know where to find it." A young woman named Mila, who used to be a computer engineer, raised her hand. "I followed one of the machines. It flew over the ocean, stopped above a deep trench, and stayed there for hours. No movement, just waiting." Raynor looked thoughtful. "That's the second report like that. One was near the Amazon, another near Antarctica. They're studying the planet." Or, someone whispered, "They're afraid of it." That idea changed the air in the room. If the aliens were not here to destroy, then maybe they were hiding from something. But what could be worse than them? In a lab deep underground, Dr. Elena Ward studied a piece of alien metal they had recovered from a crashed probe. She placed it under a special light. It changed color, shifted shape, and started sending out small waves of sound. Elena listened. It wasn't music. It wasn't a warning. It was a map. The map showed symbols, stars, and one red dot blinking slowly. Elena's eyes widened. "They're not here to take. They're here because of that red dot. Something is coming." Back in the cities, people started noticing something else. The Zarkonian ships had stopped sending messages. No new commands. No more lights in the sky. Just silence. Then, for the first time, one of the machines landed. It did not hurt anyone. It didn't even speak. It opened, and inside was a glowing orb. On it was a single symbol. It was not a word, but people around the world felt the same thing when they saw it. A warning. Captain Raynor and the Watchers now knew they had little time. He gathered his team. "We need to learn faster. We need to understand their technology. Not to fight, but to protect." Mila smiled slightly. "Then we start with the crashed probe." Raynor nodded. "And we move carefully, quietly. We may be Earth's only hope." That night, for the first time in days, stars became visible again. But to those watching closely, something else appeared. A flicker in the sky. A light that didn't belong. Something, or someone, was coming closer. The days grew quieter, but the air felt heavier. People walked more slowly. They spoke in soft voices. Even the birds seemed unsure whether to sing. Something was changing, but no one could say exactly what. Captain Raynor stood at the edge of a cliff, looking down at the wide forest below. Behind him, the Watchers were setting up small devices near the trees. Devices made from a mix of human tools and alien parts they had found in the broken probe. The probe had been small, almost like a ball of metal, but what was inside changed everything. Wires that moved like they were alive. A tiny cube that recorded sound without any speakers, and a small crystal that glowed softly when someone came near it. Mila had stayed up for 3 days studying it. She discovered that the crystal responded to thoughts. Not speech, not buttons. Thoughts. When someone held it and focused on a memory, the crystal would glow brighter. When someone focused on fear, it dimmed. But when someone felt curious, It shimmered like sunlight on water. Elena Ward, the scientist, had a theory. They don't use machines the way we do. They guide them with their minds, with feelings. The Watchers began training with these tools, not to fight, but to understand, to speak without speaking, to connect without wires. But something unexpected happened. The more they used the alien crystal, the more dreams began to change. Mila started seeing shapes in her sleep, tall towers made of light, endless blue oceans under purple skies, and a shadow that moved slowly through the stars. Elena had the same dream. So did Rainer. When they compared their notes, it became clear. The crystal was showing them something, or maybe warning them. One night, while testing a new device in the forest, Mila touched the crystal and closed her eyes. When she opened them, she wasn't in the forest anymore. She stood in a room made of light. In front of her was a figure, not human, not alien. It had no face, no arms, just a shape that shimmered like heat. And then, without words, it shared a message. The ones who came are not your enemies. They ran. They feared. What follows them does not run. It takes. Mila opened her eyes and fell to her knees. She wasn't hurt, but she felt cold, deep in her chest. She told Rainer everything. He listened carefully, then asked, "Are they warning us, or asking for help?" "I think both," Mila replied. Meanwhile, up in the sky, the Zarkonian ships began to change their position. They rose higher, formed a wide circle above Earth, and activated a glowing grid that looked like a net of stars. This wasn't a weapon. It was a signal. Dr. Ward picked up the transmission. It was not aimed at Earth. It was aimed at deep space. Someone, or something, had replied. The signal came from beyond the edge of the solar system. It was soft, slow, and repeating, but it made no sense to Earth's scientists. Until the crystal began to pulse again. Captain Rainer held it, and images filled his mind. Dark fields, broken planets, drifting silence, and then the image of Earth, surrounded by a circle of light, like a lantern in a dark sea. "They're preparing," Rainer said, "not for control, for defense." One of the Watchers, a quiet old man named Rafik, spoke up for the first time. "They didn't come to harm us. They came to stand behind us. Because something else is coming. Something even they fear." In that moment, Rainer understood. The Zarkonians had made mistakes. They had scared the world, tried to control, and caused panic. But they weren't monsters. They were lost travelers, running from a deep shadow in space. And now, Earth stood between that shadow and whatever future was left. Elena looked up from her screen. "We have 12 days, she whispered. "That's when the shadow reaches us." Rainer didn't blink. He looked at the sky, the stars, the floating ships, and the people still holding on to hope. Then he said softly, "Then we learn. We adapt. We prepare." Far above, among the stars, something cold and silent drifted closer. And it had not come to talk. The skies above Earth had turned quiet once again. But it was not the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the kind that made people listen harder, like waiting for something to arrive just beyond the horizon. In many cities, life slowly started to move again. Children peeked through windows. Shops opened doors, even if only for a few hours. People had questions, but no one had answers. The ships were still there, watching from above, glowing gently like strange moons. Captain Rainer stood in the underground control room of the Watchers. He stared at the floating image projected by the alien crystal. It showed Earth, surrounded by a thin shield made of light. Around that shield, something darker circled, something slow, quiet, and growing. Dr. Elena Ward entered with a small notebook. "The signal from the edge of the solar system," she said. "It's repeating the same pattern. But now, the pauses are getting shorter." "Like footsteps getting closer," Rainer said softly. "Yes," Elena replied. "We still don't know what it is, but the Zarkonians do, and they are afraid." In the center of the room, Mila placed the crystal on a metal table. It began to glow softly again. This time, the light moved toward a map of Earth. It pointed to a mountain range, high, frozen, and untouched. Raynor leaned closer. "That's the place from the dream." "The Temple of Silence," Mila whispered. They didn't know why it was called that. It was just a feeling that came with the vision. A place where answers might live, or memories too old to remember. Raynor made a choice. "We go there. We don't take weapons. We take questions." The journey to the mountains took 2 days. A small team of watchers traveled by air and foot, guided by the crystal's soft glow. No one spoke much. The air was thin and cold. The clouds moved slowly above them, as if even the wind was holding its breath. At last, they reached a narrow path between 2 tall cliffs. At the end of the path was a cave made of smooth black stone. It did not look built. It looked grown, like it had always been there, waiting. They stepped inside. The walls shimmered faintly, like starlight trapped in rock. There were no symbols, no machines, just silence, deep, wide, and heavy. The kind of silence that listens back. Mila held up the crystal. It glowed brighter than ever before. Then a sound filled the cave, not loud, not sharp, just a soft hum, like distant wind through trees. A shape appeared at the far end of the cave. It looked like a tall figure made of glass and mist. No face, no eyes, but something inside it felt kind. Raynor stepped forward. "Are you from here?" The figure did not move. Mila closed her eyes. "They are not from Earth, but they are not from space either. They are from memory." Elena placed her hand on the wall. "This place remembers the old things, before stars, before time." Then the figure spoke, not with sound, but with feeling. The light came first, then the seekers, then the taker. They all felt it. The words entered their minds like a calm breeze. The crystal pulsed. The seekers learned. They built. They flew. But they opened a path too wide. Something came through. The taker follows knowledge. It drinks it. It forgets nothing. Raynor understood. That's what the Zarkonians ran from. The taker. "Yes," the voice replied. "Now it follows you. But it does not know Earth yet. There is still time." Mila asked, "What can we do?" The figure lifted one arm. A tiny orb of light appeared. It floated to Mila's hand and sank into the crystal. "Remember who you are. Not what you build. Not what you own. What you feel. What you share. That is the only thing it cannot take." As the figure faded, the cave grew warm. The walls no longer hummed. The silence returned, but it no longer felt heavy. It felt peaceful. Raynor turned to his team. "We don't prepare by building walls. We prepare by connecting, sharing knowledge, sharing hope." They walked out of the cave together. Above them, the sky seemed clearer. The stars shone like they hadn't in days. But far beyond those stars, the darkness still moved. It had not arrived yet, but it had seen the light. The journey back from the mountain was quiet. Not because there was nothing to say, but because every person in Raynor's team was still thinking about what they had experienced. The Temple of Silence had not given them weapons or machines. It had given them something harder to explain. A message, a feeling, a truth hidden in stillness. Back at the Watcher's base, Mela placed the crystal on a small round platform. As soon as it touched the surface, it began to glow in new colors, soft greens and blues, with threads of gold running through the light like tiny rivers. It seemed alive now, or maybe finally awake. Elena stared at it closely. Something inside it changed after the temple. It's remembering more. Raynor sat nearby, hands folded. Then it's time we start remembering too. Across the earth, the Zarkonian ships remained in the skies, but they had shifted position once more. They were now hovering not over cities, but over rivers, mountains, forests, and oceans. Watching. listening. Many humans still feared them. Some stayed indoors, hoping for it all to end. Others, however, started asking different questions. Why did the Zarkonians pick Earth? Why didn't they leave after they arrived? And what exactly were they so afraid of? Answers came slowly, but they came. The Watchers began sharing what they learned, quietly, carefully. Not through news, but through small stories, radio signals, handwritten letters, old projectors, and simple talks. They told people about the crystal, about the dreams, about the shadow. And the people listened. In a small village in Kenya, a boy named Toma built a mirror tower after hearing about the light net the Zarkonians had placed in the sky. He believed that if Earth's surface could reflect enough light upward, maybe it would help the ships see further. In the snowy fields of Canada, an artist began painting signals on frozen lakes. Not words, but feelings, shapes that meant peace or warmth or memory. The Zarkonians began hovering above them, for hours at a time, watching in silence. In Japan, an old woman taught her students how to make patterns with sound. She said, "Words are not the only way to speak." Her group sent soft music into the sky every morning. One day, the ships answered back, with light. The Earth was slowly changing, not with fear, but with connection. Meanwhile, the crystal pulsed more often now. It began showing new images, ones that were not only from space, but from Earth's own history, lost places, buried knowledge, songs once sung by people who were now forgotten. Rainer stood with Mila as the crystal showed a vision of the sea. Beneath the waves was a smooth stone, shaped like a circle, with lines carved into it like the branches of a tree. "This is not alien," Mila whispered. "No," Rainer agreed. "This came from here, long before us." It seemed Earth had its own past with the stars, a past that even the Zarkonians didn't fully understand. Perhaps that's why they stopped here. Perhaps Earth was not just a place to hide, but a place to remember something they had lost. Then, one quiet morning, the sky changed again. A single line of silver appeared far above the planet, thin, straight, and endless. It didn't move. It didn't flash. It simply appeared. Dr. Elena stared at the data. "It's not a ship. It's not a cloud. It's a trail." Rainer's voice was calm. "It means something is close." Mila touched the crystal. It was warm now, like a small sun. The words came again, soft and steady. "You are the light it cannot hold. What you share, it cannot keep. What you feel, it cannot take." In that moment, something became clear to everyone. The shadow that was coming did not fear power. It feared unity. It feared understanding. It feared that Earth, with all its small lights and soft voices, might remember what the stars had forgotten. Rainer looked out the window. The sky was still blue. The birds were singing again. And above, the Zarkonian ships began to glow with a color Earth had never seen before, like the first color ever made. Hope. The day the sky changed, no alarms rang. No ships landed. No cities fell. Instead, the world simply paused. A faint glow spread across the sky, not like fire or lightning, but like a memory returning. It came from beyond the Zarkonian ships, from somewhere deeper, older. A light too soft to hurt, but too large to ignore. People across the planet looked up, shielding their eyes from something that didn't burn, something that felt like it had been waiting just outside time. At the Watcher's base, Rainer stood beside Mila, Elena, and the others. The crystal floated now, no longer resting on the table, but gently spinning in the air. It pulsed in slow waves, like it was breathing. Elena whispered, "This isn't a machine anymore. It's alive." "No," Mila replied quietly. "It always was. We just weren't ready to hear it." Outside, the Zarkonian ships began to hum, not loud, not threatening. Just a deep tone that spread across oceans and mountains. They were not preparing to defend. They were preparing to listen. Rainer pressed a hand to the glass. We're not just watching something arrive. We're part of what's being seen. The silver line in the sky deepened. Then it unfolded. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a being. It was space itself opening, like a page in a book turning slowly, revealing a new chapter. Out of the fold came nothing that could be touched. It was not a shadow, nor a shape. It was something else. A presence. The temperature didn't drop. The earth didn't shake. But the feeling was clear. Something was here. Not to destroy. Not to rule. But to know. Mila held the crystal in both hands. It didn't glow brighter. Instead, it grew still, completely quiet. Like it, too, was listening now. The presence reached across the earth, not with hands, not with words, but with a question. Not spoken aloud, but felt inside every person. What are you? Children in playgrounds paused. Elders in gardens looked to the sky. Artists, farmers, teachers, all felt the same question rise gently in their minds. And without panic, without fear, they began to answer, not alone, but together. A girl in a fishing village painted her dreams on sand. An old man in the desert hummed the lullaby his mother once sang. A scientist in the Arctic wrote the equation for balance, not power. A child in the city held their baby brother's hand and simply smiled at the sky. All across Earth, people shared not what they owned or built, but what they remembered, what they loved, what they hoped. The Zarkonian ships began to shift, forming a wide ring above the Earth. Soft beams of light connected them. Blue, green, gold. Not weapons, signals. They, too, began to share. Memories of their lost world. Songs sung in a language that used color, not sound. Images of laughter that looked almost human. And the presence paused. The question faded. In its place, a new feeling arrived. Not curiosity, not fear. Understanding. A moment passed. Then the silver fold in the sky began to close. Not fast, not sudden, just slowly, gently, like a door that never needed to be locked. The light faded. The sky returned. The Zarkonian ships stayed, but their lights dimmed to a peaceful glow. And the crystal, now resting again, gave one last message, just a single line. What is shared is safe. Rainer stepped outside with Mila and Elena. The air felt cleaner, softer, not because the world had changed, but because the people had. Mila smiled. They didn't save us. No, Rainer said, looking up. We saved ourselves by remembering who we are. Elena nodded, and by trusting what we could become. Above, the stars blinked quietly, as if proud. The earth turned, carrying its people gently into a new morning, one that did not begin with fear, but with peace. And somewhere, far beyond the sky, something listened and smiled back.